Alright, so here we are back in Maya, and what we're going to be doing now is just quickly add the IK handle to a skeleton, and then we're going to try and put that back into our make IK arm. And in the next lecture, in this quick introduction part, we're going to hook up the controller to control the IK controller, or the IK handle. So the first thing we're going to do now is I'm going to quickly tell you guys that normally when I rig, I've been in different companies, and there's always like different ways of doing rigging. So one of the ways is either you can build the whole skeleton accordingly to your model, and then you only have a skeleton lying around, and then you have a code that can be run on your skeleton, and that will sort of like build the rig for that specific character. Or other pipelines would be you have modules, so every time you change something in a character, like an arm or a leg, you can move that specific leg around and then just re-rig it. So in this case, or in my case, I normally like build a base skeleton and then I build on top of that. That's how I sort of like started out, and that's what I learned from the beginning. Very good pipelines. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. So the first thing I'm gonna do now is just quickly create like something that can become like an arm. So let's do that. We're not gonna be too concerned about the rigging itself. And when I say that, I mean as in naming the joints, or in placing them, really. I mean, I can move it up, but it won't really make a change. The only thing that I want to make sure of is that actually we could name them quickly, because we can rely on namespaces later on. So let's call this L AJ JNC, and we can call the next one AJA B, and either C or end. I'm gonna go with end. So in this case, what we want to do is, as you know, we have this one, which is our overall make an IK arm script, and the rest of it underneath these hashtags are gonna be our small building blocks that are gonna be divided in. So first off, we need to make an IK, and let's see, what do we need to build an IK? Well, in order to build an IK on something, we need the joint chain. So let's just say joints. Or we can say root joint, because we can find a way to get our root joint. And as some of you will already have caught on now, what the way I'm sort of teaching is, I believe in learning on the job. So we're kind of like making like a really simplified mini version of a rigging pipeline here with just one script, and then there'll be some more videos later on where we start developing into more than one script, and we're going to source our scripts into each other a little bit more than here. So right now I say like I need a root, but if I want to call this script through this one, I also need to use the root here. And also I need to do as I did down here. I need the same size and limbs. Since I already defined that this is going to be an IK, I can just take these two. I'm just going to paste those up here and change this side in here. This is where it would be smart to use a class, but we're not going to go that far, because class can be a little bit more tricky. But you know how this works by now, so we're just going to set in the size and the limbs. So sorry, I deleted that just to show you guys what I was doing. So now we're just basically expecting us to pass in this information into this one. So I'm going to quickly do that in Maya, and then I'll show you how it works. So right now I'm also putting in a root joint. So what does that mean? So if I hit save here, I want to basically give it the root joint for whatever module I'm trying to build, which is in this case the arm A. So let's try and go in here and say we have the make arm, but if I run this now, so if you haven't sourced your library after you close, remember to do that. So source, and then let's try and run it. Okay, so now it actually says I can't build anymore because I take arguments. So let's try and paste in those arguments. And the first one was give us the name of the root joint. So let's try and do that. So let's give it a name. And by now we kind of know that we need, for names, we need to give them quotations. So let's do that. And then we need a side, which is in this case L, and we need a limb, which is arm. So let's try and run this now. Okay, great. So it creates a controller, which is what we know, and we're not really using this root joint for anything. That's just information we pass in, but we need to start figuring out like how we use this. So in this case, we want to go up here and we want to say our IK. So we kind of want to build an IK that we can combine with our controller. So we all know this. So if we say I want to use this, and you can see here I don't care about the spaces. I'm trying to sort of like line my equal signs. You don't need to do anything of that. If you think this makes more sense, then do that. I like to have them aligned sometimes. Definitely some places they will have coding standards where you can't build a code in certain length out, and you can only comment every couple of lines, and there's some rules. But in our case, where we're just trying to learn the basics, we don't need to concern ourselves with that. So right now we know that this thing takes a root joint, so let's try and give it that root joint, and let's try and say print root, and then say so as soon as our function or definition does something, we don't need to worry about it anymore. Now it's not going to error on us because we're doing something inside the function. So if I save now, we try and undo what we just did and try and redo it. Okay, so it creates our controller and it prints our joint. So that's great. So right now we need to figure out, first of all, we need to create our IK handle. So how do we do that? Well, let's try and say, okay, so we have a root joint, and as you can see, when I create an IK handle, I say skeleton and I say IK handle, then I choose my settings for my IK handle. Normally I'll go with rotate plane solver, right? And then I would do, okay, create that, click here and here, and boom, I have my IK handle, right? Oh, so my computer's lagging a little bit here, but let's try it. Oh, sorry, I have snap on. Let's try and take that off. There we go. Oh, something's going oddly wrong here. Let's try and go back and see what happened there. Skeleton, IK handle. Never seen that before. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe I selected the wrong IK handle. Let's just quickly have a look here. So if I go into my IK handle tool, let's try and reset it, single chain, rotate plane solver, pick that here. Okay, there we go. So apparently I was clicking wrong. But basically what I need to do is I need to select the first one and the last one. And that's problematic for us because I only pass in the root joint. So as I mentioned before, I believe in learning on the job. There's no need for you to start learning code that you don't need. So right now we need some sort of code to tell us what is the last joint here. So we need to tell it like, okay, I have the root, but I also need the end of my arm to define that to the IK handle. So how do I get that? So let's do something called pseudocoding, where it means that we need to sort of like make some notes about what we want to do. So we have the root and we want to get the last arm joint, and after we've done that, we want to build our IK, and once we build our IK handle, we want to return the IK. So we want to return our IK handle back to our build function. So let's try and start filling this in. So here, I'm just going to hit save so we don't lose anything. This is really smart while you're working in an external editor. I can just hit save, and Maya would have to define which file I wanted to save every time. So I'm just going to kill this print root because we don't really need to know that every time, because we're going to start filling in some stuff. So we want to get the last arm joint. So let's see. Okay, what can we do here? We can try a few things, and I'm going to do that in Maya so you guys can actually see directly what's going on. So I'm going to go in and let's just try and create a new tab. So as usual, I hold down right mouse click and go up to new tab. I'm gonna hit Python, and we're gonna import maya.cmds as cmds, and we're gonna say commands dot. So I'm just gonna say commands. Let's try and list the selection. So right now we're gonna say like root equals to commands dot list sl. So this means like list my selection. Since I only have one object, it's only gonna give me the arm root, as you can see here. But you can also see that it's inside a list, and I don't want that. I only want the first item, so I'm just gonna go like this here. So right now I have listed my selection, and if I double click on it now, you can see it's no longer inside a list. It's just a string, and that makes sense because now I'm gonna start manipulating that. So what do I want? I want something at the end of this. So in this case, I can do a couple of things. I'm going to show you one way to do it here. So the first thing we can do is we can do something called list relatives. So I'm going to do like I have my root, and I'm going to say rel for relatives. So we can say relatives, and then say commands.list relatives, and we want to list the relatives of the root. And what do we want? We want the children. Or we want, actually, let's see if we can do AD. I think that's a code for it, so let's try and do that and see if Yeah, so there's something called LD on the list relatives. So what does that mean? It means all descendant. So AD is all descendant, and we can also specify if we had some different stuff in our hierarchy, like if we had some constraints or something, it would also show us the constraints in here, and we don't really want that, so we want to make sure that if there is something in there, we're not going to get that. So we're going to say type. What kind of type do we want to list? We want to get only the joints, so I'm going to define that by using a string. Remember that, so it's inside a string, and that's just the type function here. So if I go into the command documentation, let's try and load that up. Super fast internet. So let's go here. Down here you can see all descendant. Okay, so it returns all the children, grandchildren. That's brilliant. That's what we want. And you can say type. Okay, list all relatives of the specific type. And you can see here, oh, what does it do? It argument types. What does it take? Okay, so it gives us a string. That's very important for us to know. Don't worry about this boolean and all these other things. Just think about this right now. I don't want you to think about something that's not relevant at the moment. Just think about we return a string. So it needs a string to give us that name. So let's say relatives. Okay, so it gives a list of the joints. Okay, we can see that it's actually flipped around. So that's problematic, right? So it actually goes from the bottom and back up, and we kind of want to make sure that we have a list of all our joints. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to say root dot append, and I'm going to append. I'm going to say relatives actually. Dot append, and I want to append the root. So this is a Python specific command, because you can see it's not highlighting in blue, which means that it's Python and it's not a Maya function. It means that it's something with Python. So let's try and do like this, and then let's try and print the relatives now. So if I go with here and say print relatives, okay, so I got end B A. So now I got all of them in a list. But the problem with it is that they're actually switched around. I kind of want my A to be my first one and my N to be my last one. B can stay where it is. But let's try and see if we can fix that. So let's say relatives dot reverse, and let's put that brackets at the end, because I'll take brackets, and let's try and print that now. So now you can see like I reversed my list. So now it's called A, B, and perfect. So here we go. Now we have a reversed list, and we kind of want to take this code and just get that in here. So I command save that, and then my relatives are now called my so my relatives will now be my full joint list. So basically what you could do is say, so joint list equals to relatives. So it would make a little bit more sense. So now I just have like this instead. So now it's called joint list. That probably makes sense more to me when I read it later on. So I'm just going to do that instead. It's another line of code, but who cares? It's not going to make any difference. So right now we got all our joint lists. That's perfect. So let's try and hit save, and now we can go next to. Now we have filled out our pseudocode number 1. So we got the last arm joint. We actually got all of our joints, which is perfect. And we learned how to use append to a list. So in this case we appended our root joint into our relative list. So that's what we're doing here. We're saying relatives add this, and then what are we adding? The root. And then as you saw, the list was in the wrong order. It was going backwards. So we said take this list and reverse it. And then in the last part here we said the joint list, I just want to, right now it's no longer relatives of the root. So I wanted to rename that list inside my Python code. It's not renaming any objects or anything. It's just so I can use this joint list. Technically right now there's the same in these two, but this one makes sense to me. This one does. Relatives doesn't really say anything for me. So the joint list is full on joint list. Or we can call it arm joints, even to make it more logical. Let's do that. Arm joints. And we don't need to. I'm just going to hit save. So I don't want to buy it. So let's go down here. And now we got to build our IK handle. So what do we need to build our IK handle? Well, we saw that we needed to build it on our first and last joint. So let's try and do that. So we say command start. And also, we know that we always return something when we get something. When we build something, we know that by now. When we build something, Maya commands will give us some info back. So if we build an IK handle, what we get back is probably the IK handle name. So let's try and do this. So we say IK, and we're just gonna say IK because that's what we need. So we say commands.IK handle, And so I'm just doing this out of my head, so I'm probably gonna get these commands wrong. But I can handle, and let's say like we want to build it on an SJ for start joint. So the start joint should be, let's see, so that's our arm JNTS, but it's only our first one. So we know that by now we take the first object in our list. So in this case, this is right now, and I'm gonna just tap that out. I wouldn't normally do that, but just so you guys can see what I'm doing. So this is basically what we have in this list right now. So I'm commenting that. So it's so 0, 1, 2, because we know that lists are being counted from 0. First object is 0, second object is 1, 2. So in this case, I'm saying like the first arm joint equals to this one, right? That's the start joint. And let's go to here. So let's say E for end effector, and that will be my arm joints. And let's try and say that's joint 2, right? Because that's the end joint. And now the last thing we need to do is just define like which solver are we trying to build. So this is where I can't remember. I think it's called solver type maybe, and I think it's called I can't remember this. So that's too bad. So let's try and go in here and say IK handle, and just double click on that and go into the command documentation. So I'm just gonna say Control F here, and I'm gonna say IK. Solver. Okay, that's actually not. There's no command called solver type, so I'm gonna go solver, and then we're just gonna go down to 25. It's definitely something called. Okay, so it's just called SOL. So that's solver, and we want to make the IKRP solver. So we know it's called sol. So let's go in here and say sol. Delete that and IK. So one more thing we also need to do that we're not going to do in this lecture, but we're going to do that later on. We're going to have to build our pole vector. So build. So now I'm going to show you like another thing that you can do with Python inside code. So this hashtag only covers one line of code. If I type something down here, it's going to error because it doesn't know how to read this. But if I hit this one, hashtag, it will know. But what if I want to do like several lines? If I do like, if I want, for instance, like making an announcement in my script. So I want to say like this is a script by Mano and him. So I'll go like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'll have 6 either singular quotations or double quotations. You can also do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That should give you the same. So if I go here, I'm actually not sure. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that gives you the same. So if I just hit delete on that, so that'll give me like everything that I write in between this is not gonna get it's not gonna get read by Python. So I can say like this. And then save that. So right now, you know, like I can code and stuff. But what this is also really useful for is that I can note stuff here. But if there's something that I really want to like make sure that I remember, I can still go like 1, 2, 3. Sorry, and I'll go back here and I'll say 1, 2, 3. And then now I can definitely see like, okay, there's definitely something I need to remember to do here. And as soon as I've done it, I'll probably like delete these things because I only want to do this for really important stuff, or if I'm announcing something in the top of my script. So I'm gonna hit save now, and we're gonna try and build the IK handle. And once we've done that, we're gonna return the IK handle. So we're gonna return IK. But before we do that, let's just quickly print and make sure that we get the right stuff. So let's say print IK. And once we've done with that, we want to make sure that we get to this point. But that's gonna be the next lecture. So let's go back into Maya. We have our joints here. We not want this one. Don't want all this code. We're not needing this anymore. So what I can do here now is I'm going to say hold down here, or hold down right click. I'm going to go delete and current tab, and it deletes the current tab. So one thing I want to say is that you can just do like these really quick swoops and it'll delete anything for you. So let's try and do this. Okay, so it actually didn't build our code, which is really weird. So let's have a look at what's going on here. So it says the non-type object has no attribute append. Okay, so let's see line 22. Okay, so that's quite weird. Since we're returning one object, we're actually passing it one object. So let's first say like print root and make sure we can get that out. Okay, so it actually prints our joint, so that's good. So you can see like what I'm just trying to do right now is that I'm using print statements to figure out where the error is in my code. So right now, okay, so let's see here. Right now I'm actually trying to list my selections, which is wrong because I already have my selection here. I already named that. So we don't actually need this line because the root joint is already coming from here, right? We throw the root in here, root joint that we throw in, which is replacing our root. And I hope that makes sense that I pass in my root joint here. That's coming in here. We pass that into my module here. As you can see, it doesn't matter what I'm calling it. Like in this case, I call it root. Here I'm calling it root joint. But the overall thing is that this is being kept as a name, and as long as it's the first object in this list, Python knows that this will be the object. So let's try and hit save and see if that helps us. So let's go back. So we delete this object here. I do suggest that you go backwards. So Control set or set when you go backwards instead of trying to delete stuff, because as soon as you start building maybe some nodes, you can't select them in the viewport, and then Maya will complain that those nodes already exist if you just try to delete them. So going backwards is really important. It can sometimes bug and your Maya can crash, which is another good reason to keep on working in external text editors. So if I hit here, perfect. Now I can see I got my control, I got my effector, and I got my IK handle. So my effector is this piece of object here, and we rarely need that thing. So what I want to make sure is that when I return my IK handle here, I only want to get the IK handle, so you know, only the first object. Leave it safe. And some of you might ask, like, how do you know that this is always the first object? This is always standard for Maya. When you build this IK handle, it'll never be like the other way around. That's why I'm relying on just using like the 0 here. So I don't need to print that anymore. I'm returning my IK. So if we go up here and print IK, we should see that our new IK handle is coming in. So let's try and hit save here. Try and go here, so you can see it actually throws back my IK handle, which is excellent. So if you've gotten this far, that's really good, and I hope this makes sense. If you got any questions, do let me know. I'm going to delete this list here because we don't need that. We kind of understand that now. I know it's going a little bit fast, but try and watch the lectures a couple of times and try and sit and do it yourself. I'm sure that it'll help you out. If you get in doubt, then do like me, where you like kind of put in print statements and make sure that you understand what am I getting back from these things, why am I getting this, try and figure out like where does it come from. So in the next lecture we're probably going to do a pull vector, and then we're going to have to place our controller onto where our IK handle is, and then we need to freeze it or create an orient group for it. And once that's done, we're gonna either parent the IK handle underneath our controller or parent constrain it. In this case, since it's just a little exercise, an intro to how we're gonna do the scripting part, I'm not gonna go so much into like how we do the perfect rigging. This is just about the scripting. So if I decide to just parent the IK handle underneath the controller or something like that, that'll be the way we do it in just the introduction. So I hope you guys have fun, and like do contact me, and remember to sign up on manoanim.com for the newsletter, so I can keep you guys updated whenever I have a new lecture. It really helps me to get in contact with you guys and make me help you get on your toes. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, leave a comment if you learned something. Cheers.